We are recording in this as we do each one of them, put them on our YouTube channel. So if anybody doesn't want to appear on camera, then please turn your camera off now. So welcome to Show and Tell 27, 14th of July 2022. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but can I have the next slide, please? So a little bit just as everybody who's been here before will know, our vision, giving our residents more free time by making everything they do with the council faster and easier. An overarching premise for everything that we're doing when we're creating the new www.buckinghamshire.gov.uk website. Next slide, please. So just give you an idea of what we've done in the last 3 weeks. That's how long our sprints are. Colin's going to talk about blogs. I think Stuart's going to talk about maps. Parks and open spaces, I'm not sure who's going to do that, but we'll find out as we go along. Maybe Sally, maybe Dominic. Schools and missions, and then an audit of our remaining legacy pages. So what we've done this sprint is really dig down deep into that, and we'll be talking about that. And then a little bit of a teaser of our new intranet, which is coming fairly soon. But first thing up is blogs, for which I'm going to pass over to Colin, who's going to do a live demo. So welcome the bravest man in the chat.
Yeah, it's always a bit nerve-wracking trying to do a live demo, particularly when you've got the slides as well. So we'll have to transition out of these slides in a minute. But I'm going to talk to I presented about our blogs at last Show and Tell. That was for our MVP. Which is on the left-hand side here. So we delivered sort of the MVP in the first half of our sprint. In the second half of our sprint, we have delivered what looks like less, but are more essentially more complicated parts of the more nuanced areas of blogs. So this second half of this sprint, we've delivered subscription, the ability to subscribe to individual blogs so that people can get notified when something new is posted. The ability to create categories, which allows us to group things together and a little bit more intelligently, so people can get information about different parts of the blogs, and then a global homepage, which is essentially a homepage which allows you to see everything that the council is doing. It wasn't strictly necessary for each individual service area, but it's quite nice to see everything in one place and be able to see the entirety of the council's blogs sort of output. So as I said, this was a finite amount of work we had. I had one sprint, so 2 weeks worth of dev time to get this done. So we've managed to get all of these MVP and post MVP tasks done, but we do have things which were on our wish list which we weren't able to complete. So that's under the unfunded. If Pete's able to find any more money back in the back of the sofas, I am more than happy to go back and develop sort of a previous and next posts on individual blogs, so that you can go forward and backwards on those. Or indeed the ability to share individual posts through Facebook, Twitter, etc. Although most people know how to do that themselves. And then again, we have something similar to categories, which was around page author, where we would group things together by who created the content. So you'd start to get a little bit of content based around individual authors and how individual authors present stuff. So you can get your own collection of information. None of that's going to happen, but that was on our backlog. So we were trying to our damnedest to get through everything, but this is as far as we got. Obviously, the list was longer than we expected, and we got to about where we got. In fact, we got further than I expected. The global homepage and the featured post were sort of beyond where I thought we would get, and we got there much faster than I expected. So I'm really pleased at how much we managed to get. But there's obviously always more to do in these web pages. I will go on and do a live demonstration now. Let me see. Okay, so here we go. This is our global homepage. So this is a way of presenting, like I say, information. We are currently have. This is our test environment. Deployment of these post MVP changes will happen in a week and a half's time once we get approval through the IT CAB board. So this is our global homepage. So this is listing our two demo blogs at the minute, which is fostering in libraries. The more blogs that we have, the more that this list will increase. So it will show the entirety of the council's blogs. And up at the top are the most recent blog posts, and just to show people what we are doing, as an entirety of the council. So here, if I was to go into this one. Again, so this is something which I showed last sprint. The majority of this content has been done before, but we now have categories on the right-hand side, and that's about sectioning out information by what we're writing about. So individual things can be tailored a little bit more. So people who are new foster carers, for example, or people who are finding out more about case studies, can section out this information. They click on this list, and they will get a breakdown of that content, cut by various different categories. So it gives people a little bit different way of viewing the information, and it will be important as we develop and add more content to the blogs. Final piece of work that was done this time was the subscriptions model, which is down here. So people are able to sign up for to be a subscription to get notified every time that we post something new on an individual blog. So they can type in their information here, they can submit their information, and then we will send you an email for you to verify. Once we've verified you, every time somebody posts something new on this blog, people will get notified about it, so they will never be out of date for their blog content. So those are the three functions that we managed to get. Like I said, a little bit more complicated than some of the display things, a little bit more nuanced, but it does provide sort of a richer experience, I think, for the blogs template. Let's take you back to. That really brings me on very briefly to talk about the rest of the tech development work that we were able to do. We have quite a lot overlap this month between the blogs and the tech backlog, but we do have a couple of days every month to make progress. Last month we had quite a focus on accessibility. We managed to push things through that. This month we have had we're still in progress some of these, but we've had issues for HR. So we've been working on a couple of issues for our colleagues in HR around duplicate alerts and some additional functionality around the DBS check option. And then also the other thing which I'm really keen to get over is a sort of a more refined cookie notice. Whilst it doesn't make anybody's world on fire to have cookies, we have an obligation to make sure that our residents have the ability to reject cookies in a timely manner and in a clear way. So we're creating a cookies notice, which should create a much greater clarity once that's deployed. I'm hoping that will be, like I say, in the next week and a half or so. Okay, that is me. Let me hand over to the next person.
Which I believe is Stuart.
Thank you. Next slide. So as a council, we use digital maps to show routes such as Salton and Gritton, directions to buildings or locations, planning applications, or even parish, town and county boundaries. Where we may have traditionally used PDFs or images with maps on our website, we're now looking to see if we can start to introduce a more consistent digital first approach where a service has the need to use a map. Next slide, please. We're working with Adam Giles from the GIS team to come up with an approach for using these digital maps. So one of the first things we did is to look at creating a single layer map for specific journeys. For example, something like Britain routes. We discussed this because having multiple layers can sometimes cause confusion and make maps harder to use than they need to be. We also reviewed things like how far the map zooms into the map when a postcode is searched. We looked at the colour and the thickness of the route lines where we were looking at the Gritton routes, and also the background colour of the map that was used. And we did quite a lot of discussion about how we think that should be shown. Next slide, please. Thank you. When considering these things, we were aware that different maps obviously require different types of or different ways of styling. So, for example, where residents may need to see more information about a road or a street, a different background map may be needed. So far, we've created a digital map to show gritting routes in Buckinghamshire. This could potentially be used to replace the set of PDFs that residents currently use. The map features a splash screen to explain what it's for and how to use the search, a grey background for the map, and clear thick lines for the routes so that users can easily see the route. Up-to-date mapping data from the service, obviously very important, and it's also, because it's digital, it's responsive to the screen size that a resident's using, so whether it's a desktop, tablet or mobile. Our plan is to finalise the design with the GIS team and create a guidance page on our website for how we think maps should be used, and also include some technical specifications that are needed. So if a service does come to us, we have all that information. That's where we are at the moment with that, but obviously, hopefully we'll start to look to see if we can get one live soon. And that's me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stuart. So now over to Dominic, who's going to give us a little services update. Dominic.
Oh, thank you very much. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do is just give it a bit of a context and use the kind of idea of a digital front door. So we're directing more traffic through the Buckinghamshire Council front door now. A lot of the legacy websites, the home pages all now redirect to Buckinghamshire Council. So that's another drive to this door. And the main thing is we're keeping customers on the main Buckinghamshire Council site and then redirecting them to forms and legacy services like as the last point. And the migration project reduces the content and provides clearer user journeys. Next slide, please. So as a team, I've just put a little summary of some of the things we've been working on. One of the big projects we've been doing is working with the Culture, Sports and Leisure team. And this brings in archives, parks and open spaces, leisure centres, community centres. You know, it's a very broad area, and we've almost completed that. We're just in the point of switching off some of the legacy pages. So Sally has done a lot of work on the archives. We're doing some work with housing just to get their pages ready for go live. So that's going to be sort of end of the month. Rebecca did a lot of work on the parks and open spaces. Waste and recycling, we're just doing a final little bit of tidying up. So it's really with Aylesbury Vale switching off their pages. Sally's done a lot of work with environmental health of housing multiple occupation. They've been switched off, and we're doing a lot of work at the moment looking at the council and elections. So Josh, one of our kickstarts, has been involved with auditing that content. And what we're going to do for the next slide is Rebecca's going to talk through some of the work she's been doing.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Rebecca. I'm a content editor and I am part of the migration team. Next slide, please. So what we're going to look at today is I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of how we migrated the parks and open spaces pages. So when we start, we have to look at what currently exists. And to do that, we do an audit of the content. And doing an audit will identify user needs, which is keeping what is working and changing what isn't working. We identify what pages to include in the migration. By doing this, we can work out what template is best to use by how much information we need to display. And it also provides the number of views pages have received in the last 12 months. And we use this for various reasons. We look at the most viewed pages, and when we migrate that content, that usually goes at the top of the page because that is the information that customers most want. We also look at the least viewed pages, and we either move them to the bottom of the page, or we may remove them altogether if they've had little or no views. Once we've completed the audit, we then meet the team with all our research and background. We met with the parks team and we looked at whether their pages were up to date, whether they included all the relevant information or whether anything was missing. And we also looked at which pages were needed, which led back to our audit of whether there were any pages that could be removed. After that, we developed the content, and that was after several meetings with the team. And after discussion, we decided that location pages best fitted the content. An example of the location page is on the right-hand side. And the benefits of using this is that the parks can be located on a map rather than typing an address. And this is one of the main focuses that the parks teams wanted because they didn't currently have a map facility. When you look at this page on the live website, you can look at the green mapping and you can zoom in and out. So you can zoom in and you can see your local roads and pathways on how to get to the park. All the information on that park is contained on a single page, so there's no moving from one page to the next. And we can also link related content such as reporting an issue, grass cutting and overgrown trees. Next slide, please. So once the content's been drafted, we will then look at closing down old content. So we draft it on a test site, and then those test pages are sent to the parks team to approve. And then once everyone is in agreement, we make those pages live and close down the old pages with outdated content. This ensures there's no duplication of information. And that's not the end of the journey. Once the pages do go live, we then do a process of monitoring feedback. So we do this in a number of ways. Firstly, we look at the feedback for usefulness, which is diagram A. When a page is viewed on the website, you are asked to rate the usefulness of the page at the bottom, so that's stating yes or no. We can then run reports on that to detail whether we've done a good job or not. And we also use a system called Site Improve, which is diagram B, and that provides a much more detailed breakdown of how the new pages are being used. And through this system, we can monitor such things as keywords used to find parks, to make sure those keywords are in the page description. So if you did a Google search for your local park, we needed to make sure that that page came up at the top. We monitor how people navigate around the council website to locate the parks pages. So we've located parks under leisure, but are people going in looking for them under arts? Are they looking for communities? Are they looking at days out? So we need to make sure we put the information in the correct place. And we also run reports on accessibility. So we're looking at things like plain English and minimising the use of such things as tables, charts and graphs. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Over to Sally, who's going to tell us about something which I'm really keen on, which is pair writing. So, Sally.
Thank you very much. Can I have the next slide, please? So put simply, pair writing is when a content expert and a subject matter expert bring their skill and knowledge together to create new content. So they sit down and jointly write content that works for users. So the Environmental Health Management team nominated one of their colleagues to work with me on the content for houses in multiple occupation, which I'll call HMOs for short. The content had been drawn from 4 legacy websites, so there was quite a lot to go at. And I put together a test site, which I shared with the subject expert beforehand. We arranged a Teams meeting for us to look at it together. So we were working remotely, but sharing a screen the whole time. Pair writing was a new experience for both of us. Seemed a bit strange at first, but we soon got into the swing of it. A subject expert advised me on the order and accuracy of the information and used his knowledge of customer needs, and the potential customers were tenants and landlords. And he made some very helpful comments based on his experience of the questions most frequently asked. Sorry, I think I was muted there.
Yeah, I think you were.
Was that for long?
No.
Okay. So we worked quite efficiently, altered wordings, changed the order of headings, added useful links, and all of this happened in real time. So it cut down on the need to send comments or revisions backwards and forwards between myself and the subject experts. So the consequence of this was, as I'd worked with a subject expert who works on houses multiple occupation every day, his team was confident that the content was accurate and legally compliant. And when the digital team reviewed or 2-eyed the content, it was already fairly accessible. So we found that pair writing worked very well for the environmental health team, and it was a good way of making rapid progress and saving time for a very busy service team. And we're hoping it might be a useful approach when we work with other teams in the future. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Sally. Over to Jason, I believe now, for some updates around BAU.
Thank you very much. If I could have the next slide, please. So just a quick update of some of the work that the business as usual team do. As many of you know, we work through ServiceNow tickets, like many sections these days, but we also get involved in other tasks. Some of those are smaller migration sort of project work that we do with the migration team, but we also have a continuous improvement of pages that exist on our main website at the moment. So some of the migration stuff we've been involved in the continuous stuff is to do with school admissions, and those have been around delay of school start dates and the allocation of school places. We're also looking at a review of the council tax session based on some of the feedback that we get from the main website from residents themselves. So we're having a look at that. Within the BAU team, we've also been heavily involved in content audit of the legacy sites, which I'll mention in the next slide. And just to give you some numbers, we've unpublished 230 pages within the last sprint that we've done from the legacy sites and published about 346 new pages on the Buckinghamshire Council site as it stands. Here's the next slide. Around the content audit that we have been involved in, so working with some of the project team that we've got, as you all know, we're merging the 5 legacy websites into the main one. We still have another of outstanding pages that are on those sites. So the BAU team have taken each site. We've gone through every single page and in sections, and we've looked at those and collated them all into a big spreadsheet and a master list. That gives us an idea of some of the stuff that we know needs to be unpublished that have already been migrated across to the main website. It also allows us to see what we're still to do, and hopefully that will align with our roadmap and migration work that we have been doing, and also to find out some of the hidden pages that may not belong to sections, but either can be migrated over or unpublished as well at the same time. So we've been doing that. So this morning we had a very big meeting with most of the migration people as well and the BAU team just to go through each of those pages and allocate them out to each of the teams. And once that's done, I can give you another update, another show and tell of where we are with that. That's me.
Thank you very much, Jason. The team will tell you I quite often batter them on the number of pages that we've got left and chase them down on what we're doing with individual pages. So the fact that we kind of got a full audit with the name against them is really great. To give you a further update on this, here's handing over to Jez.
Thanks, Pete. Next slide, please, Colin. So you've heard some really interesting updates from the team really on different pieces of work that they're working on, but I just wanted to zoom out a bit, as I do every now and then, just to look at the overall programme and how we're getting on. So just as a reminder, I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but essentially what we're trying to do is migrate all of the old content from the legacy sites by the end of this calendar year, so by the end of December, have moved it all across onto buckinghamshire.gov.uk and rewritten it in the existing style and closed down those old websites. One of the drivers for that is cost. Running multiple websites is expensive, so if we can get these old sites closed sooner, then we will, and that's one of the things that Pete is constantly reminding us of the need to do. But just to give a kind of overview of the progress, when we started, we had something like 8,000 pages that we were looking after on the old sites. As of the end of June, we hit the 75% milestone. So we've kind of moved 3/4 of it by June. And also most of the stuff that's left, we have at least made a start on. But the big sections that are left are those listed there in business licenses, environmental health, a lot of policies, pensions, etc. So good progress. There's still quite a bit to do, but you know the end is in sight. We can sense some progress. Kind of next slide, Colin, please. So perhaps to put this in more context, this is a graph just showing the burn down rate of the old sites. So it goes back to, I think, about March 22. I can't even read the slide, but it's sort of mid 2020, at which point we've got somewhere around 7,500 pages. So we'd already closed a few, but you can see that in the last 6 months, on the right hand side, the rate of closing old pages has accelerated considerably, and actually all of the legacy sites are roughly the same size now. But just for comparison, the red line that climbs up, that's a page count on buckinghamshire.gov.uk. So this month we've kind of crossed the boundary where there are now more pages on buckinghamshire.gov.uk than there are remaining on the legacy sites. So as I say, still a little way to go, but good progress and keeping up a good pace. Next one, please. So I'm going to move on now and just talk a little bit about the new intranet. Next one, please, Colin. So when we came together in 2020, Comms put together the source as it was only ever intended to be an interim solution for the intranet. And I think it's done a pretty good job over that time, but there is still, again, the remains of some of the old legacy intranets. The source hasn't had a great deal of budget to develop it further, so it's reasonably limited in its capacity. So service improvement team started a project at the back end of last year, really to look at what comes after the source, what's the next step. I'll say a little bit more about the initial work they've done, but we've now reached the point where it's kind of been handed over to the digital team to start to develop the new site. So the objectives of what we're doing are listed there. I'm not going to read through them all, but this really comes out of the initial work that the service improvement did in talking to members of staff and councillors, etc., to understand what they struggle with on the source, what they would like to things to improve, and it's really around supporting a remote user base, making stuff easy to find, and particularly for HR and IT, the big focus is on trying to reduce the workload on their support channels and allow people to self-serve better than they can at the moment. Next slide, Colin, please. So back at the start, the service improvement did a really in-depth piece of discovery. The outcomes of these were three fundamental things. Really, was that information that staff want information that is reliable, i.e., maintained and current, quick to find, and easy to understand. The news and employee engagement, the communications, the kind of proactive communications is a little bit limited on the source at the moment, so we wanted some more functionality for that, and particularly the ability to access it from outside of the council network. So a good use case is members who quite often use iPads, and they were struggling to access things on the source through iPads. So there's a whole load of research that they've done, and what we'll be doing now is dissecting that to really work out what the minimum viable product needs to look like. What are the key things that we have to have in place for the first launch of the source later in the year, or sorry, the new intranet later in the year. Where we're at the moment is we're just in the process of going through a procurement exercise. So we developed a requirement spec based on that data. We did quite a bit of research to identify potential suppliers of intranet services, and went out to 7 that we thought had the ability to provide what we needed. We do have a limited budget, which kind of caps off some of the more sophisticated solutions that we might otherwise have looked at. The tender period actually has just closed. So a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, the procurement closed. We had 5 bids in the end. We have a tender panel that was built up from service improvement, HR, comms, and digital. So a number of different perspectives, and we've got support from IT as well. They're kind of helping advise us on what we might need to do. We've evaluated the bids, we've shortlisted 3 of them, and we have presentations at the end of this month where they're going to come and tell us more about their proposal and how they fit our needs. And the aim then is to have a recommendation to to Roger and Sarah Ashmead for recruitment or for appointment, with the aim of appointing a winner in August. And the next slide, please. So the bigger timeline, so the discovery has already been done. So that was sort of done the early back end of last year and early part of this year. Some initial design, specification design has also been done. The critical thing really is we're on the 3rd line now, so we're getting towards the delivery of the minimum viable product. So as I say, we look to appoint a developer in August, and we're hoping to have, or aiming to have, an MVP published around November this year. And then we'll fill in some of the gaps once the MVP has been developed. Some additional functionality, additional content types, etc. will then kind of follow in the following 3 or 4 months. And the next one, please, Colin. And just one last slide to finish on. So whilst we're focused on developing a new site, one of the real findings from the discovery was the difficulty people had with, particularly with the HR content, which was split between the source and UN Work. So although the content on UN Work was excellent, finding it was quite difficult because it was actually hosted on a different website. So what we've done over this last few weeks with help from our Kickstarters is, hats off to Kathleen, who's done most of the work on this, is we've duplicated the UN Work content on source. So now if you were to search on the source using looking for some of the content that was previously on UN Work, you've got a fighting chance of finding it. So the example there is if you search for jury service or jury leave, it now finds it in the holidays and time off section and takes you to the content which is now in the source rather than UN Work. So it's a quick win. Hopefully it will make things a lot better over the next few months while we're developing the new intranet in the background. That's all I was going to say about that. So back to you, Pete.
Thank you very much, Jez. Just very briefly touched on the role that the Kickstart team have had in this. So we've been lucky enough, many of you will know the Kickstart scheme, which allows younger people to take up a role within the council. We've been lucky enough to have 2 of those people, Josh, who I believe is on the call, but also Kathleen, who I don't think is on the call at the moment. And this was really my opportunity to say thank you very much to Kathleen, because this will be his last show and tell, even if he's not here. But he's done some great work on getting the UN Work content. He actually migrated it twice because we migrated it into a demo site to show some other people previously to actually getting it onto the live source. So just wanted to put it out there that kudos to our Kickstart team, both of whom have been involved on the intranet work. And if anybody has any reservations about taking on people like Kickstart employees or apprentices, really do. That's it from us. We've overrun, which is unusual for us. But if anybody has any questions, then either here or leave them in the chat. Liz will pick up with you around the duplication around parks entries. But if that's other than that, I think we're at the end. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you all again in 3 weeks' time. Thank you.